Now we're up to Daf Chav Beis Amid Beis. And Nefik Lo Nafki. So this is the end of the Gemara about Shani Rav. The Yosef Rav Me'ali Eluyeh. Many people come late, but Nefik Lo Nafik, out of respect for Rav, nobody would leave early, and therefore there was no reason for him to recite the Bracha L'Achreya. They would hear it from the next Koreh. Toshma, we learned in a Brisa, Zeh Klal Kol Sheish Bo Bitul Malacha La'am, etc., Koreh Gimel. So we'll have cases where people are working, it's a work day, and we don't want to extend the Kriyas Torah to take too long, so we only call up the barest minimum of 3 Koreh. For example, Kigon Tainis Tzibur V'Tisha B'Av. So we had a suffix vacillating back and forth. How many people get called up to the Aliyah on a Tainis Tzibur? It's written here explicitly, 3 people. She'ein bo bitul malach, bishum bitul malach. No one's working. I'm sorry, I skipped over. She'ein bo bitul malach la'am, to go Rosh Chodesh b'chol moed, korin daled. Again, we have to understand, what does it mean, ein bo bitul malacha on Rosh Chodesh? Rosh Chodesh is not also b'malach, but we'll see there was a minute not to, but in the case of Chol Shemoed, that's glaf. That I understand very smoothly because there's an Isur Malacha on Chol Moed. So we can call up 4 people, Korin Dal. Aminah, here we see conclusively that on a Tainis Tzibur we call up 3 Kruim. Amar Rav Ashi v'anan lo tnan hachi. That's not the way I understood our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says, quote, Zeh klal kol yom sheyesh bo musaf v'eino yontif korin arba. Any day that has musaf, but it's not a yontif, we call it 4 kruim. So what's Rav Ashi's problem? Lasuye mat. Why did the Mishnah have to say Zeh klal? We always know that Zeh klal comes to include something that's not enumerated explicitly in the list. Lav lasuye Tainis Tzibur v'Tisha B'Av, which would mean that on the days of Tainis Tzibur and Tisha B'Av, we should be reading 4 Kruim. Because otherwise, what's the Zeh klal coming to include? I just don't understand, according to Rav Ashi, what happened to Bitul Malach? We said that on a day that there's Bitul Malach, like a Tainis Tzibur and a Tainis Tisha, we only call 3 Kruim. And I suspect that Rav Ashi is implying a machlokas here between our Mishnah and the Bryce, and of course we go like the Mishnah above the Bryce. And the Zeh klal is coming to teach you that Tainis Tzibur is also in the same category of Dover Sheish Bo Musaf. Now you might ask me, where's Musaf on a Tainis Tzibur? And again, we go back to the Tefillah element, that we add and expand the Tefillah of the Shmon Esrei. It goes up to 24 brachos, and that Tosefes Tefillah is like the Korban Musaf. And now that we don't have the Korban Musaf, we have a Tfilas Musaf, which we recite on Rosh Chodesh and on Chol Moed. And now the Gemara is suggesting that on a Tainis Tzibur, although we don't have a Tfilas Musaf to replace the Korban, but we have extra Tefillah. So the Gemara says, Rav Ashi masnisin mani. To which Tana can you attribute our Mishnah, the authorship of our Mishnah? Lo Tanakama, below Rabbi Yossi, Nisanya. Chal, Leos, B'Sheni, Ubechamishi, Tishba fell on a Monday or a Thursday. Korin Gimel, Umaftir Echad. The Tanakama holds that we're going to read 3 Kruim and a maftir. Maftir refers to the last of the three crew. And he'll read the Haftorah. B'shlisha b'vi, if Tisha B'Av falls on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, Korei echad u'maftir echad. Interesting. Rabbi Yossi Omer li'olam korim gimel u'maftir echad. Again, no one says that you read four, that you call four kruim on Tisha B'Av. I mean, it's either 1 plus 1 or 3. But no one says 4. So what is Rav Ashi going to say about this? He derived the conclusion from our Mishnah that Zak Klal comes Lasuye Tisha B'Av and a tiny Sibur to add an extra korah. But there's no Tana who, neither Tana Kama nor Rav Yossi, who assumed a fourth aliyah. The argument was between 2 and 3, but not 4. Oh, but now, if we're going to assume that on a tiny Sibur there are only 3 kruim, what are we going to do with Zak Klal? That question now boomerangs back into our court. The Elo Kasha Zak Klal. And the answer is Lola Suye Rosh Chodesh Umoed. So in other words, the subject of this brisa is really Tisha B'Av. And the Zeh Klal is coming to include Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed. No, that doesn't make any sense. The Zeh Klal is not in the brisa, it's in the Mishnah. Let's go back for a second to the Mishnah. See the Zeh Klal inside. Here, we don't have the time for this. That's the old pressure cooker. You have it, Rabbi? Chaf, Aleph, Amid Aleph. But where's the second? Oh, it's at the end here. It says, Rashi Chadash, Chol Shamod, Kol Arba. Zak Klal, Kol Sheish Bo Musaf, Yeni Yotif, Kol Arba. So what does the Gemara mean here? Last Suye Rosh Chodesh Chol HaMoed. Oh, Baruch Hashem. Well, the Gemara is my gosh. Sorry. But Behedra Ketani. So you can't tell me Zak Klal is coming to add that which it says explicitly. And the Gemara answers, Simona B'Almi Yod. So the Mishnah is just giving you a mnemonic device for Zak Klal. And what does it add to me? I mean, you're only mentioning 2 cases of Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed, which you said explicitly anyway. I need a mnemonic device for that. Lo Teva Yontiv Chol HaMoed Ki Adodininu. You might think that if we're already introducing Chol HaMoed, then Yontif should also be included. So how do we know that Yontif is not included? Elenekot high quality biyodcha, called the tafele milsa michavre tafele gavra. You say. In other words, if you jack up the Kedusha Sayom, then you have to add an extra karu. Hilchach Rosh Chodesh called uvemoed diikum kar musaf kar narba, because the extra Kedusha Sayom, in contrast to a regular day of Chol, reflects itself in the Karban Musaf. Beyond if we have an additional Kedusha Sayom that generates an Isser Asiyas Malach, and therefore we call it 5 people to the Torah. Yom Kippur has an Ish Kares, and therefore it generates a more intense Kedusha Sayom, and that reflects itself in Shisha. We call up 6 people. And Shabbos, Dika Iker Skila B'Shiva, we call up 7 crew. Kufa, Rav Ikol Above B'Tainis Sibur, Chum Kar B'Sifri. You got an Aliyah, Pasak Baruch, When he opened up, he made a bracha for now. When he concluded, he did not make a bracha lachre. Naful kuli alman and payu. Everyone went down on their face to do nefilas apayu. Meravlo nafal alape. He did not do so. My time meravlo nafal ap. That's the question I asked you before. Why would a tiny tzibur bounce or trump or repel tachanim? I could hear the opposite. No, the tiny tzibur we should expand the tachan. So the Gemara says, "Rich Mashal Avonim Hoisa." The whole story is it's Baba Maisa. What do I mean by Baba Maisa? We mistakenly thought that Rav made like a protest that he would not be nofel apayim because it's a tiny tzibur. Ridiculous. The reason why Rav wasn't nofel apayim is because it was a mitzvah savonim. In Tanya, we have a brisa that's going to interpret a pasuk in Vayikra Chavav. The Evan Maskis lo titnu bi'artzichem l'shtafos oleo. Oleo iato mishtafa bi'artzich, aval ato mishtafa al avonim shel beis hamikdash. So you're not allowed to do ishtachava outside the beis hamikdash. And when does that apply? Amar Ula. So when you have a floor made of stone, then we don't do nefilas apayim. And Rav was stuck with this problem that the shul had a floor of stone. I don't know why everybody else was no floor apayim. What about the rest of the olam? Kami de Rav havoy. In other words, there was only stone in the place where Rav stood, where he was davening. So Gemara asks, "V'leizel lagabe tzibura v'linpol alape." Why did Rav have to stay there stuck on the stone floor? He should have moved a few inches to his left or his right and did nefilas apayim on the regular ground floor, not on stone. Lo boy lemitzvah tzibura. Apparently, there wasn't so much room in the shul. Everyone was doing the nefilas apayim, and if Rav wanted to move over to another place, he would sort of interrupt the tzibur. He would be matriach the tzibur. Iboy say, "Let me give you a better answer." Says the Gemara. Rav pishut yadayim raglam yavyo. Everybody else would fall on their forehead, but he did total prostration. He prostrated himself totally on the floor. When the Torah prohibits hishtachava on a stone floor, it only prohibits pishut yadayim v'raglayim. And therefore, since Rav had taken upon himself this minhag that for Tachnun he would do Pishut Yadayim Raglayim exactly the way they do it in the Mikdash, he couldn't allow himself the possibility of doing it because he had a stone floor in front of him. And I guess there was no room for him to do a Pishut Yadayim Raglayim on the balance of the Beis HaKnesses, where everybody was dominant. So Gemara asks, okay, it's a very nice minhag that Rav was machmir for Pishut Yadayim, but if he's in a situation like a stone floor where you can't do Pishut Yadayim, at least let him do what we call the nefilas apayim. And the Gemara says, Lo Mishayim minhag, that Rav had taken upon himself as an absolute minhag. It's like a neder. And the other option of Tachnun, of the nefilas apayim, classic, the way we know it, was not an option for Rav. Iboy same a third answer. Adam chashiv shining. Rabbi Elazar, the Omer Rabbi Elazar, ain't Adam chashiv rapayim lipal panav elim kain nane ki Yoshua ben Nun. So there's a Rashi in Tainus that he quotes here in the footnote. If a prominent person falls on his face to recite tachlin and his supplications are not answered, he will be ridiculed by other people present. This we find regarding Yoshua ben Nun Tzir, by Yomer Hashem el Yoshua Kumlach. And what does Kumlach mean? It says, Vayomer Hashem el Yoshua Kumlach lo mosata nofel aponech. So after Bnei Yisrael were routed, when they attempted to take the city of Ai, Yoshua prostrated himself in supplication before the Almighty. But God commanded him to rise. We see that a prominent person like Yoshua does not prostrate himself. Tana Rabbanon, Kida ala payim. The word Kida means to fall on your face. Shenemar vatikod basheva apayim eretz. In Malachim Beis, it says apayim. Apayim means on her face. So that's called Kida ala payim. Because it says vatikod. Vatikod means who's Kida. Kriya, when we see the word Kriya, that's al birkayim. On the knees. V'cheinu omer. And where's this pasuk from? Also Malachim Aleph. Vichroa al birkah. Ishtachavazu pishad yadayim raglan. Shenemar havo navo ani v'imcha v'achecha. Ishtachvos l'ka arts. Right at the beginning of Vayeshev. So we see that Ishtachava. So I don't know, how do you see in this pasuk that's Pishud Yadayim Raglayim? Because it says Artsa, I guess. Oh. Artsa means on the ground, implying that the entire body stretched on the ground. Levi Achve, oh, this is a dangerous business. Levi Achve Kida Kame de Rebbe, Fi Itla, Nebuch. He became a hinkadik, he became lame. So the Gemara says, V'akagarma le. Are you telling me that because he did Kida in the presence of Rebbe, that's what caused him this terrible injury? V'amar Rabbi Elazar, Li'olam al yatiach odom dvarim klapi malo. The reason why Levi became a hinkadinger is as a punishment for a crime because he was casting words of complaint to the heavens. So this is Gemara in Tainis Chaf Hey. Levi ordained a fast for rain and no rain fell. He then said to God, Master of the universe, you have gone up on high. Those your behest upon him, and you do not take care of your own children. And because of this, Levi became lame. So how can you tell him he became lame because he did Kida in front of Rav? Hava Garmal Gemara says that it was A plus B. He was disrespectful for being Meitiach Dvarim Klapi Malo, and he was punished with becoming lame when he exposed himself to injury. Rab Chia bar Ovin, Chazina Lahula Baye, I saw Baye Virava on the top of Chav Gimel, Dematzle Atzluye. That they would lean on their sides when they said Tachnum, but they never fell on their faces to the ground. And that supports what we said before, that a prominent person should not do this whole, Pishud Yadai Raglayim Kida business, because it might come to, people might say, well, God did not answer the prayers of these prominent people. And that might also cause a ridicule to these prominent people, or maybe it'll be a ridicule to Hashem. So instead, they leaned on their sides, and that is permissible. And therefore, the Mishnah Berurah paskins that nowadays we merely lean on our heads on our arms when we recite Tachnun, but prominent people may recite Tachnun in that customary manner because it's not a full-fledged prostration that they're allowed to do. He quotes Tosfos here that Abaye and Rava, their actions should be explained with reference to the Isur of Nefilas Apayim on a stone floor. And the Gemara says Tosfos is now teaching us that if he leans on his side and he doesn't actually do prostration with his face on the floor, then even if it's in a stone floor, it's permissible. But the Sfaradim have a different sak halacha, and they don't accept even falling on your side. So that's something that could be a subject of further research. We're going to stop here on the top of Chav Gimel Amud Aleph, mamish on the top of the Amud, and Amir Hashem will continue that tomorrow. So it's pretty amazing that we were able to finish the top.